Good afternoon, shopkeepers and do-it-yourselfers out there in YouTube land. Today, we're going to replace a coil spring on this 2005 F150 4x4. See if I can get you a picture in here where it's broken. It's popping and carrying on. You can see it right there. That's where she's broke. And the spring is actually doubled up over itself right there. So we're going to take this off and we're going to suspend with showing you how to take the wheel off, jack it up and all that, assuming that you're smart enough to do that if you're going to put on a coil spring. It's not too difficult of a job. We got up here on the top, I don't know if you probably just look from under here. There's 3 bolts up here in the top. One there, and one back here on the other side of the top of the strut back in there. Easily gotten to from the under the hood. And then you got a bolt down here in the bottom of the strut. This is about, I don't know, it's about a 15/16 or so. And then the nut on it is, I think it was 1 1/8. Goes back here. You can see my finger wiggle. That's where the nut goes. Anyway, we're going to take the top ball joint loose right here on the upper control arm. This is the upper control arm because it's up on top. This is the lower control arm because it's on the bottom. See, upper, lower. And we shot a little bit of lube right there, so when we start taking that nut off, it'll come down pretty good. But you don't want to be squirting oil up in here, because when you go back together, you want that to be nice and dry so that ball joint will grip in the bore and hold the ball joint still while you tighten this nut back up. Anyway, I've already gotten the nut off. The nut down here on the bottom of the strut, right down there where I'm wiggling my finger, I actually had a little bit of trouble getting it loose, but I hit it with my big impact and away she come. Anyway, we're gonna get this ball joint separated, and we got what's called a pickle fork here that you put this in there, and it's tapered, so when you drive it in, it separates it. So what we're going to do with this pickle fork is throw it over there out of the way so we don't tear up this grease boot with the pickle fork. The only good pickle fork that I like to use is one of these. And you can reach down in there and get you a good pickle and get you a bite of that pickle. As you can tell, that's a pretty good pickle fork. And when you get done with the pickle fork, you can see that it didn't damage the grease boot. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a pretty good sized hammer and we're going to hit the knuckle assembly right here about 3 or 4 times, and it should the impact should just break that grip that joint has in there, and it'll separate and we won't damage that seal. Let's see if I can get my camera set up. You can watch me use my ball joint separator. I think that worked. Well, here's my ball joint separator. I'm going to move the flashlight over here so we don't, maybe you can see that. Get my cord out of the way. Four hits with the hammer. So you can see there's no damage to the ball joint or to the grease boot. We can put all that back together when we're ready for it. That gum magnet on that light is aggravating. Anyway, pull that out. And this should have a little bit of downward play on it so I can get that. It is a little bit chilly outside there, shopkeeper. My sinuses are running a little bit now. Dadgum down. Light's all the way down there in the hole. I may go down there and get it. Okay. So I cheated a little bit. I got me my railroad spike pry bar and hooked it into the lower control arm. And kneeling down there, just kind of hook it in there so it would put a little downward pressure, give me a little bit more room to work, and so I can work one-handed. Let's see, I think I got all. Oh, I thought I did. I didn't take this other nut out. I took it loose, but I didn't take it out. Let's see. There, you see it right there. Hang on a minute. Sounds like that nut went all the way down there in the pit. Shopkeepers, when you build a pit, it's nice, but dadgummit, everything lands in the pit. Anyhow, we got that other nut off. I took it loose, but I didn't take it out. That was holding me up. Anyway, we got it loose there. If we can, well, there's the flashlight, the light, right down there in the bottom of the pit again. There we go. Looks like we might have to move that tie rod end off, swing it out of the way. Yeah, as soon as I drop that tie rod in, that whole assembly come right out there, and we're good to go. Now let's talk about how we're going to get that spring off there. Now, most of you garage keepers have got pretty good ways of getting those springs off of there. And fellas, if you don't have good equipment to do that, you got to be careful, because you could lose your head doing it. That spring's got a lot of pressure on it. I had a set of compressors. It was a bolt that would go on this side and then one go on this side, and then it had a deal that went on the top with a nut in it that would grab the spring, and then one on the bottom, and then you'd spin that long threaded rod, and it would compress this side, and then it would do the same on this side. Well, after it seemed like I started doing a lot more struts, I decided I was going to spend some money. And so we'll go over here to the compressor. And here we go, guys. I spent about $900 on this Brannick 7600 strut spring compressor. I don't know, about 8 years ago. But it's a pretty nice piece of equipment. It was a lot safer. Your prongs, your 3 prongs, bottom prongs, they slide in and out of this sleeve for a tighter circumference spring, or one that's even bigger around yet. And then you turn these dials, and you can see that that's how you get your strut in there straight up and down, perpendicular to the press. And but anyway, this compressor does the whole thing, and you set your top ones down on here like this. But anyway, we're gonna just take this off, and we'll show you how it makes your spring brand new. And hang on just a second. Yeah, there we go. See, it makes your strut assembly like brand new. All jokes aside, guys, seemed like about 6 months after I spent that $900, whatever it was, I know I gave him a $1,000 bill and I got a little bit of change back. But after I spent all that money, seemed like all of them started to come out with a ready assembly that you could buy. And you'd get a new spring, a new strut, and on the front wheel drive models, you'd get a new bearing plate. And this doesn't have a bearing plate because it pivots on the top ball joint. It doesn't pivot on the strut. The strut is not part of the steering, it's suspension only. Most of your front wheel drive vehicles, well, front wheel drive or not, the strut is actually a part of the suspension, where it goes up into the upper part of the strut mount. That's where the weight of the vehicle would set. It would push up right here, and the car would rest right there. That would hold it up off the ground. But this is not the case on this. Anyway, we'll start getting that set up in there and get these nuts off and set this fella up in there, put him back together. Might have to set the phone down. I think that might have worked. I don't know what I've done with my other glove. Here it is over here. Boy, them pickles were hot, but they're good. They're good pickles. You guys like pickles? You ought to try one of these red pickles. Boy, those pickles will clean you out. I don't like those red pickles. I just like the green ones. Anyway, back to the job at hand. Want to turn it so your bolt pattern is right. That would be to the end board. And okay, we got it up in the 3 holes in the top of spring seat. We'll put a couple nuts on there to hold it. Then all we got to do is drive this bottom bushing in the seat down here in the lower control arm. And it's a little low, so we need to get a pry bar and push up on it just a little bit to line it up in the hole. We can get the bolt in there. There it's in there. Good deal. And when I took this nut off of the outer tie rod end, I did spray a little bit of PB Blaster on there. Not a sponsor. I just like to use PB Blaster. But don't drown the whole thing. You don't want this getting wet down in there, because when you go to putting it back together, it's not going to want to grip and it'll want to spin on you when you try to tighten it up. We'll take the counterweight off. Best $10 I ever spent at an auction. That pry bar. Having this down, I did not overstress this brake hose either, so that was not a concern. And I think we'll have to go underneath. Get this bottle jacket going there. We gotta push the assembly up. Hope everybody's ready for Christmas. And I took my wife someplace expensive the other night. We went down to, got all dressed up, went down to the gas station, filled up the Duramax with diesel. Yeah, buddy, that was nice. Nice Christmas. It was even a nice, pretty red bow on the pump nozzle. That was awful good of them to do that. Anyway, there we go. Let me go up a little bit higher. And see, we're compressing that spring a little bit. And there we go. Got the nut started on there, how to hold it. And you pry down on that, and excuse me, them pickles are hot. I'm tighten this ball joint nut. Ow. My knee on that concrete. Got a rock. You want to put a little bit of pressure on that ball joint so it'll grip in that seat. There we go. German torque specs, good and tight. And then we'll turn this, line up that outer tie rod in, and tighten it. Got my glove pinched in there. There we go. Good and tight. And there's no grease zerks, so anyway, we'll get this big nut put back on over here. We'll throw a little bit of lube on it. There we go. Get that nut on there. What was that? It was an 1 3/16 nut. Probably actually metric, but that'll work just fine. That's good and tight. So all we got to do is tighten those 3 bolts or nuts up here on top of the strut, put the wheel back on. Fellas, and this job right here is done. And this customer is going to be happy. I'd like to wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And thanks for watching.